Hey guys, today we have a fascinating story that will captivate you from start to finish. Let's follow the impactful account of Lázaro Santa Cruz, a man who, after facing a near-death experience, received disturbing visions about the future of humanity and discovered a new spiritual purpose. But before we dive into this exciting story, I want to know what city you're watching this video from. Leave your comment below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our stories. Let's go on this journey together. My name is Lázaro Santa Cruz. I was born and raised in Hartford, Connecticut, a small but lively town. For as long as I can remember, I was raised in a Christian family. My parents, Dolores and Enrique, were devout people. They believed that faith was the best way to protect us from the temptations of the world. Every Sunday, there we were at church, as if it were an inescapable obligation. But to be honest, I never felt completely comfortable in that environment. As I watched my parents engrossed in the sermons, I wondered why I didn't feel the same way. The pastor's words seemed to pass by me without leaving a mark. Prayers, which for my parents were like direct conversations with God, to me sounded like mere meaningless repetitions. As I grew up, these doubts only increased. I began to question not only religion, but everything around me. Why should I accept something just because I was told it was true? It was at that time that I made a decision that changed my relationship with my family. I stopped going to church. To my surprise, my parents didn't react as I expected. Instead of forcing me to continue attending services, they respected my choice. Everyone must find their own path to faith, my mother told me one day. This attitude of theirs gave me the freedom to explore my own beliefs and questions. I spent the next few years searching for answers in various places. I read about different religions, philosophies, and even science. But nothing seemed to fill that void I felt. It was like I was looking for something, but I didn't know exactly what. Little did I know that all these questions, all these searches, would be put into perspective in a way I could never have imagined. The year was 1988. I had just turned 18, and I was about to experience something that would completely change my outlook on life, death, and everything in between. It was this summer that a mysterious virus began to spread through Hartford. At first, it seemed like just another flu outbreak, but it soon became clear that we were dealing with something much more serious, and I unfortunately was one of the victims. What happened next is something that, to this day, I have trouble putting into words, but I'm going to try because I believe my experience can bring some comfort, or at least a new perspective to anyone willing to listen. This is the story of my journey beyond life, a near-death experience that redefined everything I believed I knew about the world and myself. It all started like an ordinary day in the summer of 1988. The sun was shining brightly over Hartford, and the streets were full of children playing and families enjoying the heat. I had plans to meet some friends at the park, maybe play a game of basketball. But when I woke up that morning, something was different. My entire body ached, as if I had run a marathon the day before. My throat was dry and irritated, and I felt fatigue that I couldn't explain. At first I thought it was just tiredness, perhaps the result of staying up late the night before. But as the day progressed, the symptoms only worsened. In the afternoon, the fever arrived. It wasn't just any fever. It was like my body was on fire from the inside. My mother, worried, made me lie down and brought cold compresses to try to lower the temperature. But nothing seemed to work. The next few days were a blur of pain and confusion. The fever did not go away, and new symptoms began to appear. Constant vomiting left me completely dehydrated. I could barely keep my eyes open, and when I did, the world around me seemed distorted, like I was seeing everything through fogged glass. My parents were desperate. They tried everything: home remedies, pharmacy medicines, endless prayers. But my condition only got worse. That's when news began to arrive that other people in the neighborhood, especially children and young people, were showing the same symptoms. Hartford was in the middle of an epidemic, and no one knew for sure what was going on. Hospitals began to fill up, and panic spread across the city as quickly as the virus. Finally, after days of agony at home, my parents decided they couldn't wait any longer. They rushed me to the hospital. I was barely conscious during the journey. The scenes I saw when I got there will forever be etched in my memory. The emergency room was chaos. People crying, doctors and nurses running around, the constant sound of heart monitors and respirators. I was immediately placed on a stretcher and taken to an isolated area, along with other patients who had the same symptoms. The doctors looked as lost as we did. They did their best to keep us stable, but it was clear they were dealing with something completely new and frightening. I remember seeing the fear in their eyes, even through their protective masks. I was placed in an isolation tent along with 7 other patients. We were all in critical condition. The days dragged on, and I felt my strength slipping away with each passing hour. It was as if the virus was consuming not just my body, but my very essence. Amid the delirium of fever, I oscillated between moments of terrifying lucidity and periods of complete darkness. In the moments when I was conscious, I could hear the doctors discussing my case, their voices a mix of frustration and despair. They didn't know how to combat the virus, and I could feel my time was running out. It was on one of those nights when the fever reached its peak that everything changed. I felt my body giving in, as if every cell was giving up the fight. The darkness that once came and went now seemed permanent, and it was at that moment, on the threshold between life and death, that my journey truly began. That night I felt something changing inside of me. It was as if my body was giving up the fight, cell by cell. The darkness that once came and went now seemed to settle in permanently. I could hear in the distance the sound of the machines around me, the worried voices of the doctors, but it all seemed further and further away, as if I were sinking into a deep ocean, and those sounds were the last bubbles of air escaping to the surface. Suddenly, everything was quiet, a stillness I had never experienced before. It wasn't just the absence of sound, it was as if time itself had stopped. And then, in the midst of this absolute silence, I noticed a presence. At first I thought it was one of the doctors approaching my bed, but I quickly understood that it was something completely different. The presence was immense, filling the entire space around me, but at the same time it was not oppressive. On the contrary, it was comforting in a way I had never felt before. Little by little I began to discern a shape. It was difficult to describe, like trying to explain colors to someone born blind, but if I had to put it into words, I would say it was a being of light. Not a blinding light, but soft and welcoming. And then, I realized, it was an angel. I know this may sound strange, especially from someone who has spent years questioning their faith. But at that moment, there was no doubt in my mind. The presence was so real, so palpable, that questioning it would be like questioning my own existence. The angel leaned over me, or at least, that was the feeling I had. And then, something incredible happened. He touched my body, or what I perceived as my body in that state. The moment I felt his touch, it was as if a wave of pure energy went through me. All the pain, all the discomfort, all the anguish I had been feeling the last few days just disappeared. It was replaced by a sense of peace so profound it's hard to explain. It was as if every atom of my being was being bathed in pure love and compassion. And then, something even more surprising happened. I felt elevated. That's the best word I can use, although it doesn't do the experience justice. It was as if I was separating from my physical body. Suddenly I found myself floating above the hospital bed. The scene below me was surreal. There was my body, motionless on the bed, connected to various devices. Doctors and nurses moved around, their expressions a mix of concern and determination. I could see everything with stunning clarity, every detail, every movement. But the most impactful thing was seeing my parents. They were outside the isolated area, prevented from entering due to the risk of contagion. My mother was on her knees, her hands clasped in prayer, tears streaming down her face. My father, always so strong and reserved, was next to her, his hand on her shoulder, and I could see that he was also crying silently. In that moment, I felt a connection with them that I had never experienced before. It was like I could feel all their love, all their concern, all their fear of losing me. And for the first time, I truly understood what their unconditional love for me meant. I wanted to comfort them, tell them that I was fine, that they didn't need to worry. But of course, he couldn't. I was in a state between worlds, able to observe but unable to interact. It was then that I felt the presence of the angel again. He didn't speak, not in the conventional sense, but somehow I understood what he wanted to tell me. It was time to leave. There was more to see, more to experience. With one last look at my parents, at my body in the hospital bed, at all the life I knew, I found myself being guided by the angel to another place, a place that would forever change my understanding of life, death, and everything that lies beyond. When the angel guided me away from the hospital, I had no idea what to expect. Part of me was still in shock from everything that was happening. After all, how can anyone prepare for an experience like this? Suddenly, I found myself in a place that defied everything I knew about reality. It was as if we had passed through an invisible veil, passing from one world to another in the blink of an eye. The first impact was visual. The colors. My God, the colors. They were more vivid, more intense than anything I had ever seen on Earth. Imagine the brightest rainbow you have ever seen, and multiply that intensity by 1,000. Still, it wouldn't come close to what I was seeing. The scenery around me was breathtaking. It was a garden, but calling it simply a garden would be like calling the Grand Canyon a hole in the ground. The vegetation was lush, with plants and flowers I had never seen before. Some seemed to emit their own light, gently pulsing in rhythms that resembled heartbeats. The sky above, well, I don't know if I can call it heaven. It was a kaleidoscope of ever-changing colors, as if the northern lights had decided to put on a special performance just for me. But the most impressive thing was not the look, it was the feeling. From the moment I entered that realm, I was filled with a deep peace and inexplicable joy. It was as if every atom of my being was vibrating in perfect harmony with everything around me. As I took it all in, the angel who was guiding me, and who I could now see clearly, smiled at me. Its shape was difficult to describe. It was as if it was made of pure light, but at the same time, it had a solid, comforting presence. "Welcome," he said, his voice echoing not only in my ears but throughout my entire being. "This is a place of healing and renewal." I looked around once more, and to my surprise, I began to recognize certain elements. There, in the midst of all that otherworldly beauty, were familiar features. A creek that snaked through the landscape reminded me of the river that ran through Hartford. A gentle hill in the distance had the same contour as the hills I used to admire from my bedroom window. Is this Hartford?" I asked, confused. The angel nodded. "It is, and it isn't. This place reflects the essence of your earthly home, but in its purest form, free from the imperfections and limitations of the physical world. As we walked through this celestial realm, I began to feel something strange. It was as if an invisible weight was being lifted from my shoulders. All the worries, fears, and anxieties I carried, some of which I didn't even know existed, simply disappeared. "What's happening to me?" I asked the angel. He smiled again. "Your spirit is healing. Here, you can rest and renew yourself, free from the limitations and burdens of the physical world. We continue our journey through the heavenly garden. With each step, new wonders revealed themselves. There were trees whose leaves seemed to be made of crystal, reflecting and refracting light in impossible ways. Flowers that opened at our touch, releasing fragrances that evoked long-forgotten memories. At a certain point, we arrived at a lake with crystal-clear waters. The surface was so calm that it looked like a perfect mirror, reflecting the kaleidoscopic sky above. The angel invited me to approach the shore. "Look at your reflection," he said. When I leaned over the waters, I was shocked. The face staring back at me was not the 18-year-old I was when I fell ill. It was me, but at the same time it wasn't. It was as if all versions of me, past, present, and future, had merged into a single image. I saw the innocence of my childhood, the confusion of my adolescence, and a wisdom I didn't yet possess. Here, the angel explained, you are not limited by linear time. You are all of your possibilities at once. I stood there contemplating my reflection for what felt like both an instant and an eternity. When I finally pulled away, I felt complete, like I found a part of myself that I didn't even know was missing. The angel then guided me to a nearby forest. The trees there were ancient and majestic, their tops stretching so high that they seemed to touch the sky itself. Among the trunks, I saw scattered stone benches, some occupied by luminous figures who spoke in whispers. This is a place of meeting and reflection, said the angel. Here, souls can come together, share experiences, and learn from each other. As we walked through the trees, I began to notice something fascinating. Some of the luminous figures seemed familiar. Not in a way I could explain, but it was as if I knew them from somewhere, from some time. The angel, noticing my curiosity, explained, some of these souls you met in your current life, others in past lives, and some you will meet in the future. The idea of past and future lives was something I had never seriously considered before. But at that moment, it seemed to make perfect sense. It was as if I could feel the vastness of my own existence, extending far beyond the limits of my current life. We continue our journey through the celestial realm, each new place revealing new wonders and profound insights. I felt like I was not just seeing, but experiencing fundamental truths about existence, the universe, and my own place in it. And yet, I knew this journey was just beginning. There was more, much more to see and learn. The angel, my constant guide, seemed to read my thoughts. Yes, he said, his voice full of compassion and wisdom. There is more for you to discover. Are you ready to continue? With a mix of excitement and reverence, I nodded. Little did I know that the next steps in this journey would challenge and expand my understanding of the universe in ways I never could have imagined. As we continued through the woods, the angel guided me to a clearing. There I saw something that took my breath away. A group of people, or rather souls, gathered in a circle. Each of them emitted a soft light, unique in its color and intensity. These are souls who, like you, are in transition, the angel explained. Some have just arrived in the spirit world. Others are about to return to Earth for a new life. We approached the circle, and the souls made space for us, as if they were waiting for us. It was then that something extraordinary happened. Without anyone saying a word, I began to listen to their stories. The first soul that connected with me was a woman. In life, she had been a teacher in California. He died in a car accident on the way to school. I could feel his sadness at leaving his students and his family, but also his acceptance and the peace he found in this new state. Beside him was the soul of an elderly man. Her story was one of pain and overcoming. He had been abused for much of his life, but found the strength to forgive his abusers before he died. Its light had an especially serene glow. A young soul, not much older than me, shared her battle with cancer. She fought bravely for years, but finally succumbed to her illness. Still, her energy was vibrant and full of hope for the future. The most fascinating thing was the way we communicated. They were not words in the traditional sense, but a direct exchange of emotions, memories, and experiences. It was as if we could feel each other's lives, understanding in seconds what would take hours to explain in words. One soul in particular caught my attention. He was a middle-aged man who had died of a heart attack. What struck me was the feeling of déjà vu I had when connecting with him. Somehow I knew our souls had met before, in another life. Yes, confirmed the angel, reading my thoughts. You have shared many journeys together. In some lives you were brothers. In others, close friends or even adversaries. Each encounter was an opportunity for learning and growth for both of you. This revelation made me reflect on all the people I had met in my life. How many of them did I already know from other existences? How many lessons have we shared without even knowing it? As I talked to each soul, I noticed a common theme. They all, regardless of their life experiences, felt a deep gratitude for having lived. Even those who experienced great suffering saw their experiences as opportunities for growth and learning. An elderly soul, who in life was a farmer in the American Midwest, shared with me, "Each life is like a planting season. Sometimes the harvest is plentiful, other times it is meager. But there is always something to be learned. There is always growth." Another soul, that of a young woman who died too early due to a congenital disease, radiated surprising wisdom. The length of life does not matter as much as how deeply we live it. My few years on earth were filled with love and learning. As I absorbed these stories and lessons, I felt a shift within me. My own perspective on life and death was expanding. Death, which I had previously viewed with fear and sadness, now seemed more like a transition, a passage to another state of being. The angel, noticing my internal transformation, smiled gently. "It's beginning to sink in, isn't it? Life and death are part of a continuous cycle. Each experience, whether joyful or painful, leads us to a greater understanding of ourselves and the universe." I looked once again at the circle of souls. Each of them had a unique story, a singular journey, and yet they were all connected, part of something much bigger. "What now?" I asked the angel, feeling that our journey was far from over. "Now," he replied, "let's go beyond the individual stories. There is something more you need to see, something that affects not just one life or one soul, but all of humanity." With these enigmatic words, the angel guided me out of the clearing. The souls in the circle said goodbye silently, each returning to their own journey. As we walked away, I felt a deep gratitude for having shared this moment with them. Little did I know that what was to come would challenge everything I thought I knew about the destiny of humanity and my own role in it. As we moved further away from the clearing, the atmosphere around us began to change. The vibrant and comforting colors of the heavenly garden gave way to darker tones. The air, once light and fragrant, became heavy and oppressive. "What's going on?" I asked the angel, feeling a growing apprehension. "We are approaching a vision of the future," he replied, his voice carrying a seriousness I had not yet heard. "It is important that you see this, Lazarus. What you witness here could have a profound impact not only on your life, but on the lives of many others." Suddenly, it was as if we were floating above the earth. But it wasn't earth as I knew it. What I saw horrified me. Entire cities were in ruins. Buildings that once stood majestically were now nothing more than smoking rubble. The streets, once full of life, were now deserted or filled with people running in panic. In the sky, I saw warplanes cutting through the clouds, leaving trails of destruction wherever they passed. Explosions lit up the horizon, each one representing more lives lost, more dreams destroyed. "What is this?" I screamed, feeling my heart sinking at the devastation. "That, Lazarus, is a vision of what may become World War III," the angel replied, his voice full of regret. We continue to watch the apocalyptic scene unfold before us. I saw armies marching, weapons of mass destruction being detonated, and suffering on a scale I had never imagined possible. What was most disturbing was seeing how the war affected not just the combatants but every aspect of life on Earth. Agricultural fields were burned, making famine a reality for millions. Hospitals, overwhelmed and underfunded, could barely cope with the constant flow of injured and sick people. "Why is this happening?" I asked, feeling tears running down my face. "The reasons are many and complex," the angel explained. "Disputes over resources, extremist ideologies, the desire for power, but ultimately, it all comes down to the choices humanity makes collectively. We continue to witness scenes of destruction and suffering. I saw families being separated, children losing their innocence at an early age, elderly people abandoned with no one to care for them, Each image was like a stab in my heart. Is this inevitable? I asked, desperate for a glimmer of hope. The angel turned to me, his eyes full of compassion. The future is not written in stone, Lazarus. What you are seeing is a possibility, a path that humanity can follow if it continues to make the same choices. But there is always hope. There is always the possibility of change. As he spoke, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. In the midst of all that destruction, there were small points of light. Looking closer, I saw that these were people, individuals and small groups, who, even in the face of adversity, were helping each other, offering comfort, sharing what little they had. "See?" said the angel, pointing to these lights. "Even in the darkest circumstances, the kindness and love of humanity still shines. It is these lights that have the power to change the course of the future." I stood there watching those little sparks of hope amidst the chaos. It was comforting, but at the same time, I felt a huge weight on my shoulders. If this was a real possibility for the future, what could we do to avoid it? As if reading my thoughts, the angel said, "Remember, Lazarus, the future is shaped by the choices of the present. Every act of kindness, every decision based on love and compassion, has the power to change the course of history." As he absorbed these words, the vision began to dissipate. The scenes of destruction disappeared, giving way once again to the serene environment of the spiritual realm. But the impact of what I saw stayed with me, etched in my soul. "There is more you need to see," said the angel, his voice now charged with an urgency that wasn't there before. "What we have just witnessed is only part of the story. The real battle, the one that will decide the fate of humanity, is happening on a much deeper level." Confused but feeling the importance of what was coming, I nodded. The angel then guided me to what would be the most eye-opening and challenging part of my journey, a vision that would forever change my understanding of the nature of reality and the role of each of us in it. The scenario around us has changed once again. Now we were no longer observing the physical world, but rather a completely different dimension. It was as if we could see reality in overlapping layers. The material world I knew, and, superimposed on it, a pulsating, vibrant, energetic plane. "What are we seeing?" I asked, marveling at the complexity of what was before my eyes. "We are observing the spiritual plane, Lazarus," the angel replied, his voice full of gravity. "What you see here is the real battle being fought, a war that is not fought with physical weapons but with thoughts, emotions, and energies." As my eyes adjusted to this new reality, I began to notice patterns and movements. It was as if I could see currents of energy flowing between people, connecting them in ways I had never imagined. Every thought, every emotion, every choice we make creates ripples in this plane, the angel explained. These ripples spread, affecting not just ourselves, but everyone around us. As I watched, I noticed that some of these energy currents were luminous and beautiful, radiating colors I didn't even know existed. Others, however, were dark and turbulent, creating distortions in the fabric of reality. "What are these dark energies?" I asked, feeling a growing uneasiness. "They are manifestations of fear, hatred, greed, envy, all the negative emotions and thoughts that human beings cultivate," the angel replied. "And those bright lights are expressions of love, compassion, forgiveness, and kindness." As we continued to observe, I saw that these energies were not simply floating in the air. They were interacting with people, influencing their thoughts and actions. I saw individuals being enveloped by dark clouds, their faces contorting into expressions of anger or fear. Others were bathed in golden lights, their faces softening with peace and joy. "This is the real battle, Lazarus," the angel said, his voice echoing with an intensity that made me shudder. "It is not a fight between nations or ideologies. It is a war that is being fought within every human heart, every moment." As I absorbed this revelation, I noticed something even more disturbing. There were entities, I can't think of a better word to describe them, that seemed to be actively manipulating these energies. Some of these entities were luminous and beautiful, working to spread light and harmony. Others were dark and twisted, feeding on fear and negativity. Are they angels and demons? I asked, remembering the stories I heard in church as a child. The angel smiled gently. These are human concepts simplified to something much more complex. But yes, in essence, this is what you are seeing. Forces that work to elevate human consciousness, and those that seek to lower it. I watched, fascinated and horrified at the same time, as these entities interacted with humans. Some whispered thoughts of love and hope, while others planted seeds of doubt and fear. But don't humans see this happening? I asked, shocked by the magnitude of what I was witnessing. Rarely consciously, the angel replied. Most people experience these as random thoughts or emotional impulses. Few understand the true power they have over these energies. As I continued to observe, I began to understand the true nature of this spiritual warfare. It was not a battle with a defined field or clear front lines. It was a constant struggle, occurring every moment, in every choice we make. I saw how a simple act of kindness could create a ripple of light that spread, touching countless lives. And I saw how a moment of anger or selfishness could trigger a cascade of darkness, affecting not just the individual, but everyone around them. That's why every choice is so important, the angel said, as if reading my thoughts. Every decision we make, every thought we entertain, contributes to this cosmic battle. I stood there, observing this cosmic ballet of light and shadow, feeling the weight of responsibility that each human being carries even without knowing it. It was a sight both terrifying and inspiring. But if people don't know this, how can they make a difference? I asked, suddenly feeling small in the face of the immensity of what I was seeing. The angel turned to me, his eyes shining with ancient wisdom. That's where people like you come in, Lazarus. Those who have had a glimpse of this reality have a responsibility to share that knowledge, to inspire others to make conscious choices, to cultivate light in their hearts. I felt the weight of those words. It was like I was receiving a mission, a calling to something greater than I had ever imagined. Remember, the angel continued, darkness can never overcome light. All it takes is a small flame to dispel the deepest darkness, and every human being has that flame within them. As he absorbed these words, the vision began to dissipate. The spiritual plane gradually disappeared, but the understanding of what I saw remained with me, engraved in my soul. As we returned to the celestial realm, I felt that something fundamental had changed within me. I was no longer just a passive observer of life. Now I understood the crucial role each of us plays in this great cosmic tapestry. The angel, noticing my internal transformation, smiled gently. You are ready for the next part of your journey, Lazarus. There is someone who really wants to talk to you. Intrigued and a little apprehensive, I followed the angel, knowing that what came next would be equally transformative. Following the angel, we arrived at a place that looked like a serene garden. The colors here were softer, reminiscent of an eternal sunset. The air was filled with a familiar scent that I couldn't immediately identify, but which brought me a sense of comfort and nostalgia. Where are we? I asked the angel. This is a place of transition and encounter, he replied softly. Here, souls can reunite with departed loved ones for healing, comfort, and guidance. As I absorbed these words, I noticed a figure approaching. As it got closer, my heart skipped a beat. I would recognize that walk anywhere, even after all these years. Uncle Raphael? I whispered, barely believing what I saw. There he was, exactly as I remembered, but at the same time, different. His face, once marked by time and worries, now radiated a peace and youth that I had never seen on him in life. His eyes shone with a love and wisdom that seemed to transcend time and space. Lazarus, my boy, he said, opening his arms. Without hesitation, I ran to him, wrapping him in a tight hug. Tears streamed down my face as I felt the comforting warmth of his embrace. It was as if all those years of longing and loss had disappeared in an instant. "I missed you so much," I murmured between sobs. "I know, my dear," he replied, his voice full of affection. "But I was never really away. I've been watching you, guiding you when I could, cheering you on every step of the way." We moved away a little, and I watched him closely. Uncle Raphael had been like a second father to me. He passed away when I was just 12, and his death was one of the hardest blows I've ever faced. Did you know I was coming?" I asked, still trying to process everything. He smiled, that warm smile I loved so much. "Let's say I was told you could come visit. Not everyone gets that opportunity, you know. You're on a very special journey, Lazarus." We walked through the garden together, and Uncle Raphael began to tell me about his own journey after death, how he had to learn to let go of earthly concerns, how he found peace and purpose in this new state of being. "You know, Lazarus," he said at one point, "death is not the end. It's just a transition. Our souls continue to grow, to learn, to evolve." I nodded, remembering everything I had seen and experienced up until that moment. "Uncle, I saw incredible things, and terrible things too. A future war, a spiritual battle, but it's also overwhelming." Uncle Raphael placed his hand on my shoulder, his touch bringing a wave of comfort. "I know it's a lot to process, but you were chosen to see these things for a reason. You have an important role to play, Lazarus." "But what? What can I do?" I asked, feeling the weight of responsibility. "You can make a difference simply by being who you are," he responded. "Every act of kindness, every word of encouragement, every choice based on love, it all matters more than you can imagine." We continued to walk in silence for a while, taking in the beauty around us and the depth of our conversation. "Lazaro," Uncle Raphael said finally, stopping and turning to me, "you need to know that your journey here is coming to an end. Soon, you will have to return." I felt a tightness in my chest. The thought of leaving this place, of being separated from my beloved uncle again, was painful. I don't want to go," I admitted, feeling like a child again. Uncle Raphael smiled with understanding. "I know. But your mission is not here, at least not now. You have much to do in the world of the living. Many lives to touch, much light to spread." He pulled me into another hug, and I clung to him, trying to commit every detail of this moment to memory. "Remember, Lazarus," he whispered, "I will always be with you. We all will be. You are never truly alone." When we separated, I saw that the angel who had guided me throughout this journey had returned. He was standing a short distance away, waiting patiently. "It's time," said the angel gently. I looked at my uncle once again, feeling my heart break and fill with love at the same time. "Go," said Uncle Raphael, with an encouraging smile. "Live, love, make a difference. We will meet again, when the time is right." With tears in my eyes, but with a heart full of purpose, I turned to follow the angel. As we walked, I felt my uncle's comforting presence gradually diminishing, but the love and wisdom he shared stayed with me, strengthening me for what was to come. As I followed the angel, I felt a subtle change in the environment around me. The vibrant colors of the celestial realm began to fade, and a feeling of heaviness gradually returned to my being. It was as if he was diving back into the density of the physical world. "What's going on?" I asked the angel, feeling a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. "It is time for you to return, Lazarus," the angel replied with a gentle smile. "Your journey here is coming to an end, but your true mission is just beginning." As we advanced, I began to feel a pull, as if an invisible thread was pulling me back. It was a strange sensation, almost uncomfortable after the lightness he had experienced in the spiritual realm. "I'm scared," I admitted, surprised by my own vulnerability. "What if I forget all this? What if I'm not able to fulfill my mission?" The angel stopped and turned to me, his eyes shining with infinite compassion. "Lazarus, fear is natural. But remember, You carry within you everything you experienced here. Even if your conscious mind does not remember all the details, your soul will hold these truths." I nodded, trying to absorb his words. We continued our journey, and little by little, I began to feel physical sensations that I hadn't experienced in a long time. The weight of my body, the sensation of air entering my lungs, the beating of my heart. Suddenly, I found myself floating above my body in the hospital. The scene was surreal. Doctors and nurses were running around, monitors were beeping frantically, and my parents were there, their faces marked by fear and hope. "It's time to go back," said the angel softly. I felt a sudden fear. What if I don't make it? What if it's too late? The angel smiled. "Trust, Lazarus. Trust the process, trust yourself, trust the love that brought you back." With those words, I felt a gentle force pushing me back into my body. It was a strange feeling, like trying to put on clothes that were too small. For a moment, there was resistance, and then my eyes opened. The hospital light was blinding, and each breath felt like a monumental effort. I heard screams of surprise and joy all around me. "He woke up. It's a miracle," I heard a nurse exclaim. My parents approached the bed, tears of relief streaming down their faces. "Lazarus, my son," my mother sobbed, holding my hand tightly. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry and sore. A doctor approached, checking my vitals with a look of astonishment on his face. "It's amazing," he murmured. "His organs are functioning normally. It's as if the disease never existed." In the days that followed, I underwent a series of tests. Doctors couldn't explain my sudden recovery. To them, it was a medical mystery, a miracle of science that they could not understand. But I knew the truth. Although the memories of my spiritual journey began to become hazy, like a dream that escapes awakening, the essence of what I experienced remained with me. I felt a deep peace and sense of purpose that I had never experienced before. As I regained my strength, I began to notice subtle changes in myself. Colors seemed more vibrant, sounds clearer, but the most significant change was within me. I felt a deep connection with everything and everyone around me. When I was finally released from the hospital, the world seemed new to my eyes. Walking the streets of Hartford, I saw beauty in things that previously went unnoticed. The smile of a stranger, the song of a bird, the wind whispering through the trees. But along with this new appreciation for life also came a sense of urgency. It reminded me of visions of the future, of the spiritual war that was being waged. I knew I had a role to play, even if I didn't know exactly what it was. I started making small changes in my life. I began to treat people with more kindness and compassion, aware that each interaction could have a much greater impact than I imagined. I began meditating, seeking to reconnect with that peace I had experienced in the spiritual realm. My parents noticed the change in me. One night while we were having dinner, my mother asked, "Lazaro, what happened to you in the hospital? You look different." I hesitated for a moment, unsure how to explain. How could I put into words an experience that defied reality itself? Finally, I decided to share a little of what I had experienced. "Mom, Dad," I began, feeling the weight of the words. While I was sick, I experienced something that changed everything for me. I saw things that I can't fully explain, but that showed me that there is so much more to life and in death than we can imagine. I told them about the angel, about the celestial kingdom, about meeting Uncle Raphael. I spoke about spiritual warfare and the importance of our daily choices. As he spoke, he saw their faces go from confusion to astonishment, and finally to acceptance. When I finished, there was a moment of silence. Then my father, with tears in his eyes, said, "Son, I don't fully understand what you've experienced, but I can see the impact it had on you. And if it made you the wonderful person sitting before us today, just I can be grateful." In the days and weeks that followed, I continued to process my experience. Sometimes I found myself doubting, questioning whether all that had really happened. But then, in quiet moments, I felt that connection, that deep certainty that there was something more. something greater. I began researching near-death experiences, discovering I was not alone. There were others who had been through similar journeys, who had glimpsed the other side and returned with a new perspective on life. Gradually, I felt a calling to share my story. I started speaking in small groups, at local churches, at community centers. At first, I was nervous, fearing skepticism and ridicule. But to my surprise, I found people eager for hope, for a glimpse of something beyond this reality. One evening, after speaking to a particularly receptive group, an elderly woman approached me. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Young man," she said, holding my hands, "your story has given me hope. I recently lost my husband and have been struggling to find meaning. But hearing you talk about the other side, about the love that continues, it changed everything for me." At that moment, I felt a wave of gratitude and purpose wash over me. I realized this was my mission, to bring hope, to share the light I had experienced, to help others see beyond the limitations of this physical world. Of course, not everyone believed it. There were skeptics, those who dismissed my experience as hallucinations caused by the illness. But I learned not to be shaken by skepticism. I knew that my task was not to convince everyone, but simply to share, to plant seeds of hope and love wherever I could. As the years passed, I continued my journey of growth and learning. Sometimes, in moments of stillness, I felt the presence of the angel, or glimpsed Uncle Raphael's smile. These moments reminded me that we are never truly alone, that we are part of something much bigger. And so, day after day, I continue my mission. I know there are challenges ahead, that the future I saw is still a possibility. But I also know that every act of love, every conscious choice, every moment of kindness contributes to shaping a better future. My near-death experience was not the end of one journey, but the beginning of another. A journey of discovery, of love, of service. And although sometimes the path seems difficult, I carry with me the certainty that there is light even in the deepest darkness, and that love is the most powerful force in the universe. Sitting here, years after my near-death experience, I can't help but reflect on how those moments beyond the veil completely changed the course of my life. Every day is a new opportunity to put into practice the lessons I've learned, to spread a little more light in this world that often seems so dark. I vividly remember the visions of the future I was shown, the devastation of war and mass suffering. These images still haunt me, serving as a constant reminder of what is at stake. But instead of paralyzing me with fear, these visions drive me to act, to make a difference, no matter how small it may seem. I understood that the true battle, as the angel showed me, is not fought with weapons or armies, but in the hearts and minds of each individual. Every choice we make, every thought we entertain, every action we take contributes to the balance between light and dark in this world. There are days when I feel overwhelmed by the magnitude of the task. How can I, a single person, face so many challenges? But then I remember the angel's words. All it takes is a small flame to dispel the deepest darkness. In moments of doubt, I hold on to this truth. My journey has taken me to places I never imagined. I have spoken to large audiences, written books sharing my experience, and had the privilege of comforting people in their darkest moments. Every time I see a spark of hope light up in someone's eyes, I feel like I'm fulfilling my purpose. But not everything has been easy. I have faced skepticism, ridicule, and even threats from people who see my message as an affront to their beliefs. There were moments when I wanted to give up, when the weight of the mission seemed too great to carry. In these moments, however, I feel a comforting presence. Sometimes it's like Uncle Raphael is by my side, reminding me that I'm never alone on this journey. Other times, it's as if I can hear the distant echo of the angel's voice, encouraging me to move forward. One of the most profound lessons I've learned is about the interconnectedness of all things. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, creates ripples that spread in ways we cannot predict. A smile to a stranger, a kind word to someone who is hurting, a moment of patience when it would be easy to become angry. All of these small actions contribute to weaving a web of light and love that envelops the world. I also learned the importance of balance. While I am dedicated to sharing my message and helping others, I also need to take care of myself. Meditation, quiet time in nature, and time with loved ones have become essential anchors in my life, helping me reconnect with that peace I experienced in the spiritual realm. As I get older, I feel a growing urgency. The future I saw is not inevitable, but the window of opportunity for change is closing. Every day is precious. Every interaction is a chance to make a difference. Looking back at that 18-year-old who walked into the hospital with a mysterious virus, I can hardly believe the journey that followed. The near-death experience was just the beginning. The real adventure has been living each day with the expanded consciousness I have gained, trying to live up to the gift of the second chance I have been given. I don't know what the future holds. The visions I saw only show possibilities, not certainties. But I know that as long as there are people willing to choose love over fear, compassion over indifference, there is hope. My experience has taught me that death is not the end, but a transition. This takes away a lot of the fear of death, but it also increases the responsibility of living well, of making every moment count. So here I am, continuing my journey, one step at a time, sharing my story, offering hope where I can, and reminding everyone I meet about the incredible power each of us has to shape not just our own lives, but the very fabric of reality. And for you, who have read my story so far, I leave this thought. You are more powerful than you imagine. Your choices, your thoughts, your actions matter more than you can conceive. Never underestimate the impact you can have on the world. Always remember, there is light even in the deepest darkness. And that light, it's inside you. Use it well.